Luckily, there are a lot of new technologies in manufacturing that support a supply chain system that is much closer to the consumer, sometimes even co-located. So when you take things like the ultra cheap stuff coming out of the shale fields that can be used to make more value-added products like plastics, that's a completely domestic supply chain. You marry that to something like, say, 3D printing, and anyone who has a warehouse can now also be a manufacturing center. So it's not so much that you have an Amazon distribution center close by and get products the next day. It's that you have someone's, like Amazon's, distribution and manufacturing center nearby, and your product is made and delivered to you the next day. That is going to be the norm for probably about a third of consumer goods. And then the more advanced stuff like your washing machines and your cars, we already have a lot of that here. And the Mexicans are proving remarkably creative at moving up the value added scale very quickly. I'd say in terms of total labor productivity, the Mexicans have now passed the Canadians.
Wow.
There are plenty of pinch points. There's no way we adapt to this quickly, but we were seeing the fastest industrialization process in the American history in the last year of the Obama administration. And then with COVID, it's sped up. And now with Biden, it's speeding up more. We're moving in the right direction. We'll get there. I hear you. I hear you. And I don't think they know yet. And I don't think they know yet either. And that's part of the beauty of populism, is it attracts support without even having a policy. It just catches the ennui and the anger. As a rule, when we're going through these political reshufflings, that's when the populists are the loudest. And as a rule, when we're done with the reshuffling, the populists are shoved back into the closet. What's going on right now is every faction wants to be the issue that is the litmus test for loyalty to the party. And so whether it's an issue on race or abortion or inequality, everyone is screaming. It usually takes 8 to 12 years for us to sort this out. We are now in year 7. So we have at least one more presidential cycle to go through, unfortunately. I can't do more than hazard a random guess as to what the factions will look like on the backside. But the idea that in a rapidly aging demographic, because we're aging too, that the rules of the past apply might be a bit of a reach.
What's a rule?
Yeah,
what's a past rule that you think is going on the way out?
Well, it's when populations get older, they get a little bit more crotchety. And so I can see us at least, I can see at least for a few years, us getting a third party where the populists of the left and the populists of the right are more or less on the same page. And that won't be stable having 3 parties. It will always collapse back to 2. But for the first time in American history, one of those parties might actually be populist. We won't know for a few more years. But when I see people like Donald Trump and Joe Biden basically having exactly the same foreign policy and economic policy, I think that's going to slow down, unfortunately. A lot of the countries that we've historically gotten population from in the last half century have been Mexico and Central America, and they're tapping out. They started the industrialization process later, but now it's been going for at least 25 years. So their population structure is starting to become a little shy of kids. So I think we're going to see, Mexican migration to the United States for the last 13 years has been negative for 12 of the 13. Central Americans are going to grow into that club here in the next few years. Any other population movements you're talking about, that's us going out and getting people. That won't happen without a change in mindset. Now, I am part of that business community that is now politically disenfranchised. I would be thrilled if the administration, regardless of whether it's Biden, Trump, or someone else, would play that game. Because if you look at what's going on right now in the world, in Ukraine, you've got 45 million people that are going to have their country destroyed, and they have first world educations. There's a wonderful opportunity there. In Russia, a country that besides a real shit show, there are a small number of people, less than 3 million, who are actually skilled technologically that are trying to get out. And what a wonderful opportunity there too. So every time a country in the wider world gets smacked up the head, there's an opportunity to go there and to basically poach. But we need a change in mindset on our side before we can do that. I don't think that's going to happen in this administration. We'll see what the next one looks like.
Yeah.
Most countries don't have the economic self-sufficiency or the military reach to do it right now. It takes time to build that. And first we have to get through the dark side of this. So first we have deglobalization. First we have the American withdrawal. First we have the Chinese collapse. And as all that is going on, new powers will rise, but not tomorrow. Probably not this decade. The ones that are most likely are Turkey, Japan, France, and Argentina. They've kind of got the magic mix of demographic flexibility or strategic reach or an ability to interface with raw materials suppliers and markets, or maybe just have a good partnership with the United States. But that doesn't happen overnight.
How Japan, given the demographic?
Yeah, exactly. Well, Japan has been aging slowly for a long time. And don't get me wrong, they are still the world's oldest country, but the pace of their aging has been surpassed by dozens of other countries now. And they have managed to not just automate a lot of their industry successfully. They did it in an environment before there was a capital crunch, so it's already in place. And they've offshored a lot of their manufacturing to countries with better demographics. So they've already found a way to kind of work with this. And they've also cut a deal with the United States under the Trump administration. So, if you can deal with Trump and Biden, I think that says volumes about their strategic flexibility. So they've kind of bought their way into the club, so to speak, which is like the worst possible thing for the Chinese.
Man, and this is why focusing on 1946 is helpful. To your point, there's a condensed version of this history which isn't useful analytically, which is in 1946 we committed to building the post-war. No, like there was 10 years of decolonization, the Korean War, that whole Greek and Turkish thing. So yeah, like there was a lot of chaos in that story. But I think the other question would be, and this is a little separate from the whole realignment of the political parties question that I'll basically close with after one last one after this, which is basically this era is not coinciding with a functional political system in the United States. So a key detail of 1945 is you have, once again, people's beef with New Deal liberalism aside, like that was a definition of a governing structure which could respond to that era. So can you talk about the American political system's like structural inability, regardless of where it goes policy-wise, to seem to come up with an answer to this? Because I think people who think Trump coming back in 2024 is going to address any of these issues, you're out to lunch. So yeah.
Well, you hit a good point, because from 1945 to 1955, every imperial power had been smashed. The Soviet Union had built its Iron Curtain. And for 10 years, we had the United States at the height of its relative power versus the world. Most of the world was devastated. And it still took 10 years to build out the system we now know. We're doing anything that might come out of this now. The United States has gone home. Its military is inappropriate for the job. Its economy is renationalizing, and its politics are in a dither. There isn't anyone out there that has the capacity to displace or replace the United States on the global stage. The best you can hope for is some tight regional systems around powers that are relatively coherent themselves. But a global order, that